put up the first talk and then let's go. Always leave the clicker here, please.
Hi.
Just a minute.
I can already start.
There we go.
So this is about a little tool that I've developed for quite a long time, but I haven't actually really advertised it a lot. And lately I've thought I should make it a bit more usable for more people and maybe make it a bit more well known. So the thing is, you have web applications. So maybe you run a personal web page or a company web page or whatever, or a blog with one of these popular content management systems or other web applications. And yeah, sometimes they have security vulnerabilities. And then maybe you forgot to update them, and that's bad, and then you get hacked, and then I don't know, then you have some JavaScript that's mining cryptocurrency, and you're sending spam and all these things, or maybe you're hosting phishing pages now, which you don't want. That's all quite annoying, and maybe your web hoster will then tell you that, I don't know, he will shut down your web page. Yeah. So you should better update. Or you should use WordPress. I'd like to say this. WordPress has kind of a bit of a bad reputation. I think WordPress is definitely the most secure content management system you can get because it has automatic updates. But let's assume you run a server for other users, which I actually do, and you want to know if your users update their web applications, because it's also annoying for you as a server admin if you send spam or whatever. So you would like to check if your users actually update their web applications. And that's where you need FreeWVS, which is the tool I developed for this. So this is kind of how it works. So you run it and give it a path, and then it will tell you, oh, it seems there's a Joomla version 3.9.11, and that has a known security vulnerability. And there's also a Nextcloud and a MediaWiki also with known security vulnerabilities. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works in the backend. That's the data that it has, in this example, MediaWiki. So I maintain this myself. People often are curious, and yeah, I manually do this, but it's not as much work as people think. So it knows that there's a safe version, and there are some older branches that have also safe versions. There's a vulnerability, and then there's some information how to detect the version. So if there's a file, default settings PHP, that contains the variable VG version, then that means there's a MediaWiki in that version. So it's actually 12 years old, so I've been doing this for quite some time. It's free software under a CC0 license, which means you can do with it whatever you want. It's written in Python, uses some string matching and regular expressions, which is a bit ugly, but there's no better way to do it. And then compares it to data about vulnerable versions. Yeah. So please try it. And also, as I said, I tried to make it more usable. You can now install it via pip, but there's also some design decisions where I'm not really sure how to do it yet, particularly about the data and how to update that. If you're good at Python and want to discuss how to best do that or discuss improvements, please come to me, talk to me, and please try it out. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. So next up is Pocket Science Lab.
Hello, good morning. My name is Mark. I'm a software developer. I'm talking about hardware, which may sound a little bit strange, but I'll explain that in a few seconds. Pocket Science Lab is a little hardware which lets you measure all kinds of things. And why I like to use it, you see here, this is my set little lab, which I have to get out of the boxes in the evening, play around with microcontrollers, and put it back into the boxes again when I'm done, because this is also the table where my family eats breakfast, where my wife has a home office where my son likes to play Legos, and where I like to play with hardware. I don't have much room to have an oscilloscope or stuff like that, and that's why I'm happy to have found this Pocket Science Lab device thing. You use it by connecting it to your computer or to your smartphone via USB. Wi-Fi connection is currently being developed. Hope to see that soon. You install software. I'll come to that later. And then you just connect things to the Pocket Science Lab with cables with little pins. So if you like to play with Arduinos or ESP32s or things like that, you stay in your little pins and cables world, and it all connects together quite nicely. The software has different screens for the different use cases. It also has help screens, so if you're clueless as me, you can just take a look at the help screen, and it tells you how to connect things, how you can measure things, or just what you can do with the device. You can get the software from the website, pslab.io, but you can also get it, the software for the phone, you can get it from Google Play Store or from F-Droid. What can you do with it? You can substitute an oscilloscope, multimeter, or logic analyzer. Maybe if you're like me, you don't have much space. You just need a small device, or you travel a lot and you don't want to carry a lot of things with you. Then you can create test data with a wave generator. You have a programmable power source, or you can just look at things by connecting sensors, and you can either display values from the sensors, or you can log it and analyze it later. I forgot to say, I'm not a developer of the device. I'm only a user, and I'm happy to have found it. So if you like the device, if it looks interesting, just come to the Frost Asia assembly. It's in Hall 2. They have devices there. They have cables. They have sensors. You can play around with it. You can buy it if you want. You can maybe get tips how to build it yourself, because it's open hardware. You can build it yourself. The firmware is free. Everything is free. They will be there until midnight, they told me. So if you like the device or would like to take a look, just go there and have a look. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is JMap LTTRS.
Hi, I'm Daniel. So I originally got interested in this a couple of years back. I was trying to finally self-host my own email. And I was looking for an email client for Android that provided a similar user experience to Gmail, and I couldn't find any. So I thought, how hard can it be to write your own? That led me to look into email, which, in case you don't know, is the protocol most email clients use to fetch email from your server. So it turns out IMAP is a little bit of a mess. It's an extensible protocol, and you need a bunch of server-side extensions to provide a good user experience. But as a client, you're also expected to deal with servers that don't have those extensions, and that makes your client code quite bloated. Furthermore, IMAP doesn't use any of the well-established serialization formats like JSON or XML, so you cannot even use a stock library to pass the wire format. Even if you get through all that mess, you still have to deal with MIME parsing, which is another complicated thing. And and also, like, sending emails requires yet another protocol. So luckily, there's an alternative to that called JMap. So what is JMap? JMap basically is IMAP with all the cool extensions. And And it will also make the server deal with all the MIME parsing. So as a client, you basically get a JSON structure with the email data that is essentially ready to display to the user. It's also stateless and doesn't require persistent TCP connection, because you may hate that mobile phone vendors are preventing apps from keeping a persistent TCP connection in the background, but you just have to deal with that, and that's just how it is. So from a client developer's perspective, JMap makes a lot of things a lot easier. However, it's still fully compatible to IMAP, so it can operate in the same data structure on the server, and you can just as well use an IMAP client and a JMap client in parallel. And obviously, the server-to-server communication remains untouched as well. So that what got interested me in JMap, but it's not all what JMap is. So JMap really is a data synchronization protocol, more of a replacement for active sync than just for IMAP. And in the future, it will also be able to handle calendars and contacts and so on. So what JMap isn't, you still have to deal with some of the legacy mess of IMAP and email, for example, like text emails with HTML emails. It won't provide a big noticeable difference for end users, because if you already have a well-functional JMap client, you won't know the difference as a user. But from a client developer's perspective, this makes a lot of things a lot easier. And yes, that's what I did. I wrote a client that's really not a lot of code. It's based on a JMap library that I wrote as well, that acts essentially as a headless email client. So it handles everything an email client would normally do except for the UI, like sending emails, archiving emails, marking something as read, or flagging, unflagging. And the app itself is really limited, like no frills, no settings. I'm not planning to introduce any settings screen at all, because settings always invite feature creep, and I don't want that. It's heavily inspired by Gmail. The same backend in the end could potentially also power a command line client. So yeah, what can you do with it? You can retext emails, you can process emails, like marking something as read or flagging or marking it as important. You can write emails, and there's some light responding, like you can respond to an email and it will like match the proper email IDs, but it won't quote the email. Unfortunately, the biggest hurdle if you want to try it, the only server software that supports this is Cyrus, and only the unstable Git version. Dovecot, which I'm sure a lot of you are running, is interested but hasn't started the work on it, as we are running out of time. I'm still looking for people to help me out with this project, and I'm available on Congress if you want to meet, and here are some links that you might want to check out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Badge Magic.
So, yes. Hello. Okay, so this is really a great lightning talk session because we are early, right? Awesome. Good job, guys. So, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity here to share a few updates about our project Badge Magic. So, right, it's a wireless project, and as we all know, wireless, that's magic. So you can magically create text and clip arts on LED name badges using Bluetooth. That's what we're doing with the badge here, okay? And you charge it through a battery through USB. So it's a badge, and it can be accessed through Bluetooth. What we're doing, developing an Android app, and also we are looking like to develop more and more apps on all the other clients like desktop or iOS and so on. So what's the story behind it? We found these cool badges everywhere, and everyone loves light and blinky things, and we see a lot of this here at the Congress. But like we had this app here, and this app is like mixed Chinese, is colorful, even though the badge is just like one color, and there are a lot of issues with this, and a lot of people wanted to do new things with it. So we thought, how can we develop an open source app And we have a large community, but it's often like front-end developers, or it's like people who know about server setups and so on, and not so many people who really like hack and decode things. But then we were really happy because we found this guy here. So on Hacker News and everywhere, so there was a guy who said like, let's reverse engineer the LED name badges here using Bluetooth, and he really did it. He put up a blog post, and just like in the great hacker spirit, then also put it here online on GitHub and shared his work, right? And as we often see here also at the Congress, there's so many cool ideas, but actually often the like a lot of hackers have the spirit, I hacked it, it's working for me, it's working on my machine, here's the code, do what you want, and they move on. But for us it's also really nice because we have conferences like the FOSS Asia Summit or the Open Tech Summit in Berlin, and we want really like everyone to be able to use these badges. So what we did now is we made a call in the community here that we're working with. For example, I'm many years in Singapore and Vietnam, and we built this awesome community here around the FOSS Asia free and open source solutions. It's not just software, now also hardware. And we said, hey, now we have this hack, let's make an app for it. So we invited everyone and people showed up, right? So we have this app now, and yesterday I had some comments here of people who said, oh yeah, this is really polished, it looks really like a nice thing. And of course, it's on F-Droid, it's on Play Store. We still like a lot of things to solve and make it smoother and so on, but like most of it works. And we also had it already at the camp. And yeah, really nice. You can have clip arts, you can have different directions to show the text and so on, and yeah, do a lot of things. You can make it slower, you can make it faster, and write all kinds of text. So some developments have happened in the recent months. For example, let's say you really make your badge and you create a lot, you make a clip art, and you know, you make it really nice and you want to share it with your partner or with your friends and so on. So we implemented now export badges to one device, share your configuration. Why not? Import, export. Then also a nice thing is that the original app doesn't have is drawing things. So you can now have a drawing mode where you draw on the badge, and then you can have it as a badge kind of feature. And there can be a lot of more things that we can do here as well. And of course, like as you can imagine, we had crashes. So we fixed a lot of crashes. Interestingly, like most of the developers who joined were like from Vietnam and Malaysia and so on, and they don't use non-Latin scripts. Yeah, so interestingly, it was a Chinese origin, but we didn't support non-Latin scripts, so we started to do that. We fixed a lot in this direction also, so adding more and more scripts. So get in touch with us here on GitHub, on the channel, or join our Code Heat contest, which we have. This is how we also like invite more people to participate in our projects here at FOSS Asia. It's a coding contest where, for example, the winners could win a trip to the Singapore event in March every year. This is also like badge magic. We just added this project into this contest. Now the question is, what is next? Of course, talk to us. We have in Hall 2 in the decentralization cluster and assembly with FOSS Asia, and we want to do a lot more things. For example, what you see here, I hope you can recognize this as like this kind of small fan, and these fans can have different words on it. Why not do this as a next fun project, maybe even add it here into the app where you can configure these fans. Why not do iOS? I personally don't use iOS, but interestingly here at the Congress, so many people use iOS, so I think we should have an iOS app, and some people actually just started, so if you want to join, just join us as well. And of course, we need the hardware to be open. We have a lot of open hardware projects in FOSS Asia with Badge Magic. Some people say, oh, that's too simple for me, I'm not interested, but maybe somebody is interested to join this, and let's make really the hardware itself also open, and that would be cool. Thank you very much. Join us in Hall 2.
Thank you. Next up is Path Auditor. There you go.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Ciro. I usually like memory corruption bugs, but today in this talk I want to talk to you about something a little bit else, a different class of vulnerabilities that I thought deserves a little bit more love, and show you how you can find them yourself. Because in the end, as long as it gives you a shell, that's okay for us. So I will talk about privilege escalation bugs. So just imagine what happens if you have this. This syscall run by some process which is running as root on your Linux box, and it's doing rename temp foo bar to temp foo by x. So the first thing you might notice here is, well, this doesn't make any sense. You can't move a directory into itself. Like, how is that supposed to happen? But the fun part about this is actually a privilege escalation vulnerability. And to understand why, we will have to take a quick look at what the kernel is actually doing. So the kernel will get the syscall, it will take the first path argument first and will resolve it. So it goes to slash, then temp, foo, bar. It takes a reference to this file. It could be a file or directory. The kernel doesn't know at this point. And then it goes on to the second one and does the same thing again, right? So you just slash, temp, foo. But on Linux, there are these things called symlinks. So what if a user can actually write to this directory and just replaces bar with a symlink at this point in time? Then the kernel will follow it, go to etc, for example, and move the file that it got before and move it to a different directory. So if this is running as root, this is bad, right? Because just imagine a user can mess with this and move an arbitrary file to etc cron, for example, and get it executed later as root. So there are two caveats to this that I want to mention, which is, number one, rename only works with, if it's on the same file system, it will not move across file system boundaries. So if temp is just a regular directory, it will work. If it's a tempfs, this case will not work. The other thing is, temp is usually a sticky directory, and symlinks are a little bit special in sticky directories, but this doesn't apply since we are 2 directories deep. In any case, you might wonder why I'm using such a complicated example, because like this class of bug, there's such much better examples than this that are much easier to understand, but well, this was actually a real bug. There's a tool called temp remover which is trying to delete all files in temp, and it was doing exactly this to find out if something is a mount point. So now we want to find these kind of issues at scale to get them fixed, right? So there's a very simple idea that works surprisingly well in practice, which is, well, we can just hook all the functions. What if we can just install hooks on every process on the system running as root, take every function in the libc, like open, rename, whatever it is, just hook the function, and whenever you call it, you check the path. You try to figure out, can this path be somehow messed with by a user, because that might be unintended side consequences. Like there might be unintended side effects. Of course, it depends a little bit how the value is used, what the function call is in the end, but it's usually a bug if this happens. So we wrote this tool, me and the coworker Marta, and you can try it out. It works like this. You build this library, libpath auditor it's called. You can use LD preload. So the way it works is use LD preload. This allows you to load the library into another process, and then we can override open, rename, and so on, and then just check if the path could have a vulnerability like this. And then afterwards, if it does, we just log it to syslog, and then you will have afterwards to check out the syslog, find all the alerts, and then look at them manually. But usually these are very fun because they always have these tricky side effects. For example, there was one case where a shell script was trying to cut a PID file to check if a process is still alive and kill it. But then if you cut an arbitrary file and follow symlinks, you might end up putting the content of the file into the arguments, and the arguments are visible by every other process on the system, so you would leak arbitrary files with this. So there's some really cool bugs in this. So long story short, you can find it on GitHub. If you have any questions, you can ping me on Twitter, or I will be at the CTF area most of the time. And I'm really sorry, I just noticed the build is broken. I will try to fix it as soon as possible, but in the meantime, just you have to fix up the includes like you see on the bottom. Just remove the third party mention, and then everything should work out of the box. If not, just let me know, and I can help you try to debug it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up is this talk. I'm interested how they spell it. I'd say axolotl, but let's see.
Okay, my talk is about axolotl. Axolotl. It's this small animal living in Mexico City, but it's nearly dying because of environmental issues. But axolotl is also the encryption